All right, welcome back. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you're all enjoying it so far. Let me ask you a question first. So we're considering a rule change that won't affect this year, but will affect next year's 1L. So this doesn't affect you at all. So just be honest. As it stands now, for a 1L required class, 100% of your grade is your final, right? You all know that. We can give a midterm, but it can't count towards your grade. And we're considering a change to that. Okay. That a midterm could be up to as much as 15% of your final score. 1-5. 1-5. And I'll just give you the pros and the cons, and if you want to raise your hand, you can. As it stands now, how should we say? Not everyone takes midterms seriously. You're laughing. It's true, especially in the second semester and definitely in the third semester. I think the first semester is a little bit different. I think first semester people are kind of panicking. They take it a little more seriously. By the second semester, not so much. By the third semester, forget it. Right. That's why in Property 2, I used to actually grade midterms, and I stopped because no one took it seriously. It just wasn't a good use of my resources. For Property 1, which is your second semester, I think it's actually a closer call, and I'm more willing to do the grading. But Property 2, for sure, not. Con law, forget it. It's not even worth it. Okay. But if there was skin in the game, right, that is, you actually had 15% on your final score. So imagine, or just make it easier, let's say 10%, right? So let's say you bomb the midterm, you make starting off with a B. I mean, more or less, right? Let's say you ace the midterm, you can bump up a B to an A on the final. All right, a second, not done talking. One of the other issues is anonymity, which does matter, right? The final exams now are all blind graded, right? Where I don't know who you are, I graded them all with a number. But for the midterm to make sense, it really can't be anonymous. I mean, I've tried it before and it never works. The reason why is you want to get feedback, and you invariably learn who gets what. Now you can grade them blind, that is, you don't know who it is when you're grading the paper, but eventually you want to talk to the student one-on-one. So that's why having absolute anonymity doesn't work. Now, the downside of it, I promise, but I'll get to you. The downside is that it potentially punishes students who get off to a slow start. Like there's some students who really are floundering the first few weeks, but then they sort of turn it on for the final. I think the students are a bit of a unicorn, right? Maybe they exist. I haven't really seen many of these students. Usually people who flounder at the midterm flounder in the final. At least in my experience, when I used to grade them, whatever grade you got in the midterm was your final score, within plus or minus a third. It's a pretty good predictor. It's very hard to sort of do a 180 in the middle of the semester and turn around. It's possible. It happens. I've had students go from a D on the midterm to an A in the final. Rare. I've also had students go from an A in the midterm and then bomb the final because they stopped studying. They got complacent. So we haven't voted on it, and actually, a faculty meeting I think is next week. So I'm starting to think about it. So Ben, you were patiently. What do you think about this? Again, this won't affect you because you guys are you're out of the woods, so you can be honest, and that's why I'm asking you all.
The only reason why I would think I'd be hesitant in giving a grade for the midterm is because the midterm is where I figure out how a professor wants their essay done. Because each professor is a little particular in how they want it. So
what if I told you in advance exactly what I'm looking for, which I've done?
Yeah. So
and I've done that very, very clearly. So assuming that's done, would you have the same objection?
Yeah, I would really maybe go you would have to have a practice essay outside of class or assignment.
So if the professor gave you a sample, the midterm before the midterm, I guess, right? A sample exam before the midterm. What do you think about that?
Well, then that would be.
Okay, Hillary, what do you think?
I also think it's the Langdells, because usually our Langdell just started last week and now it's almost midterm. So I think if they start
earlier, that's a fair point.
That's why I learned no professors ever tell me exactly that the Langdell does. So because they'll start around the same time.
Oh, that's actually a fair point. So I'll raise that. That's actually something concrete we can do because you're right. The midterms, I'm sorry, the Langdells don't usually meet till the end of January, beginning of February. If they were to meet, one second, I'll get you guys in a second. If they were to meet earlier, because I think that for us this semester, halfway point is right around spring break. That's usually about halfway point, so March. So you would say, all right, that's actually a very good. Let me make a note. That's actually something concrete we can actually vote on to do the Langdells earlier. I promise I'll get to you in a second. I'll make a note of that. Langdell earlier. Okay. Because the way it works is we actually vote on these things and we have amendments and stuff. So maybe one way to do this is you could. Now, would it be just one extra Langdell session, or what do you think, or did you start the entire thing earlier? Because it's now almost every other week, more or less. I'm sorry, every week. So, but they start end of January.
Yeah.
Mid-January or early September, right after Labor Day, I guess, for the fall. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
I think it's very common across all U.S. law schools that it's a one test for your whole entire grade. I think it's the equivalent to kind of ditching the Socratic method in law school. I don't know. I feel like it's just so prevalent and the way that.
Wait, you said grading a midterm is ditching? I didn't understand your point.
I think it's I feel as if ditching the traditional method of having one exam be your whole entire grade is the equivalent to just ditching the Socratic method. I think it's just the way law school's been done for such a long time.
Okay, it's a fair point. Most law schools don't give midterms at all. I'm sure if you talk to your friends at UH or UT, they don't do this at all. One second, 1, 2, 3. I'll get you guys in a second, Alex as well. The reason why we're doing it is frankly because trying to help you out, right? I know it may seem like we're hurting you, but when you create incentives in the right way, it often benefits students. So what may seem bad for you in the short run, come, let's say June, you're like, oh man, I'm glad I had that midterm, right? When you get your grades. Alex, then Sarah, then I forgot who else wants a hand.
I think that it would disproportionately benefit people who have, those who are able to start the semester off to, prepared. Especially if you have a cumulative final, because then if stuff they already did well on, when they do well on exams, the final, so it kind of allows them to double dip for a big grade. I think that might put those who are the unicorns you call them that don't necessarily exist off to the greater disadvantage.
What would you think, Alex, of a variant where not the first semester accounts, but the second semester accounts? Because I remember first semester 1L is a scary place. I know you were all there not too long ago.
We didn't have a lot of. I don't think we had a single midterm last semester.
From your first semester or your second semester?
And I think that would have benefited a lot of us for some of our classes.
Okay.
So I mean, the second semester I'd be much less opposed to it. But the first semester, I think just because law school it teaches such a whole separate set of skills. And I say this as someone who kind of had those skills coming into law school. I was one of those early starters that got an advantage, and I don't want to put myself out even further into someone who doesn't already, do it.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I've actually considered because again, from where I stand, the first semester of law school, we work those who have friends who are lawyers. If you come into law school with no friends, no family, you don't know what the hell you're doing. And I told this someone last week, they didn't believe me. My first semester, I got a C+ in torts. It happened. True story. I don't know what the heck I was in. My first exam ever, I completely bombed it. I progressed. I figured out what I was doing after that, but maybe the second semester. All right, Sarah, Kelsey, I forgot who else had their hand up.
Well, I think it'd be helpful with midterms if there's a way to have quicker feedback too, though.
Okay. I'm going to address that one in a few minutes, the quicker feedback, but continue. I have a response to that one. You're not going to like it either, but it's almost pointless. It's almost worthless.
But I think if they write it and then we talk about it.
Oh, you're going to love my idea. All right, I'll just do it now. So I am very sympathetic to what Sarah just said. I used to, before I had children, grade very quickly. I can't do it anymore. No, it's. I used to give the midterm like the day before spring break. The last class, and I would spend the entire spring break grading. It took me 60 hours, and I did it. It's not sustainable. When you're young, you can do that. You'll learn. When you get older, you can't do those things anymore. It's just not humanly possible. But I would have them graded like in 2 or 3 weeks. And Sarah, let me tell you, do you know how many people actually came to pick up their exams? About half. I would leave the papers with my secretary, but half people never came to pick up their papers. And that made me feel like I was wasting my time. So, oral. Yeah, so here's my other idea, which you're not going to like. Oral examinations. On the spot. Graded immediately. And let me tell you why. No, I'm serious. I was waiting to that, and I know people have their hands up. I'll get to you later, but the difficulty with the graded midterm is that you take it and then you don't get your feedback for a while. And by the time you do the feedback, you don't remember. You have no idea even what you did. You just don't remember. So what if I were, I always have these like questions in the board, right? If I said the midterm will be one of those questions, I won't tell you which one. Maybe 5 of them, right? And I'll pick 5 at random for the entire semester. So you have noticed, right? Every question I'm going to ask you is a question which I've already covered. And I say, you come to my office, you sit down, and I'll give you 5 questions at random. Pick a jar, pick a number of a jar. I'm not picking them. And then I grade you on the spot. So let's say I have 10 points, I give you an 8, a 9, or a 7, I give you feedback right away. And that's it, you're done. You're done in 15 or 20 minutes. And I think with a section of 60, you just do the math, give everyone maybe half an hour. Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, I could probably just stretch it out. So if I were to actually do a live assessment for the midterm that counted, to give feedback time enough to make it meaningful, which I think is important, I might just do it on the spot. Okay. Kelsey was patiently waiting. I think Duke and maybe one other. Yeah, Patty. Yeah, go on. 5 more minutes to start. Then we have to actually do law. Yeah, Duke. Oh, Kelsey, then Duke. I'm sorry.
Definitely not the first semester. Like, even though both my parents are attorneys, they've forgotten pretty much everything they learned in law school, so they weren't helpful. But it took me a while to get into just the rhythm of law school, thinking like a lawyer, learning how to write that.
Yeah.
So I would have that on the midterm just because I wasn't comfortable with
Yep.
it.
No, I got that. Yeah.
And maybe second semester, once people have kind of become just acclimated to both like legal reasoning and legal writing, it would be more fair, but that's still something first semester that really.
Yeah. No, I got that. I hear that. Duke, your hand was up.
Piggyback. Kelsey is also because I guess I have a different perspective coming in after being away from school for several years, and I really thought having a master's would help me in
It's not a real degree. I'm sorry. It's just.
And all I did was make some more hair. And I think it takes us a while to get acclimated
Yeah.
and to learn how to write. If you do an oral exam, that's another skill you have to get and work on.
Yeah.
Because a
Well,
lot of people will freeze. And is it fair for them to have that
even if the
kind of-
questions are given in advance.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
people, not everybody's comfortable doing oral.
But isn't this class exactly that? Isn't that the skill I train every single day in class by asking these exact same questions?
But it's not for 15% of our grade.
Well, maybe it should be. I mean, but that's the point. In other words, you'll be put in the spot at points in your career. I mean, it's if there's ever a simulation of what real life is like, it's that you have 5 minutes to make an oral argument, and that's as much time as you got. Yeah, I've had to make oral arguments on the phone from an airport lounge. I mean, you do it. I'm serious. The judge says, "Get in the phone now." And okay, judge, I was at the airport and I got in the phone. I did an oral argument from a lounge at the airport. The ADA question, though, I'm actually aware of. Right, there are people who may have accommodation issues, and I'm actually sensitive to that. There might be ways around it. Also, for timing, though, is as much time as you need. There's no time limit, right? Which is also an issue with accommodations. You get the time and a half, whatever it is. No, I know there'll be some people who freeze. I'm aware of that, which might be a huge demerit of the proposal. I'm still thinking it through. I'm not. It won't affect you. You'll be all graduated. It won't affect any of you. But I'm still thinking it through. Who didn't speak yet? I want to get to my haven't spoken yet. Yeah, Sydney.
Just my only comment is very hard about the people with disabilities, like if they need to freeze or not, but I just feel like if you're going to do midterms for, a grade, and like you were saying, and I think a lot of people have been saying is, especially some people in this class, I feel like, we don't do well on the midterms, but then we go get help and then we do better. But if you've already bombed the midterm and we're starting almost as a B, you're expecting us to make an A, but we might not be really good at sports.
But it's also curved, though. So keep in mind, when you say bomb the midterm, you're bombing in relation to your classmates, right? So it's not that you're bombing objectively; it's you're doing substantially worse than what your classmates are doing.
But you still fail, could you not?
Yeah. I've had people fail the midterm, but what I used to do in the past, the way I would do is if you didn't show up, you failed it. People failed the midterm.
I guess my thing is like, what if you really did try and you still bombed?
But keep in mind, if let's just say I do something where I'm giving you questions where you had before, right? The failing the midterm will not be due to a lack of preparation. If you put in a modest effort, you're going to pass. The incentive is if you don't prep, then you're in trouble. In other words, it's very rare when I have a student who doesn't do well in the midterm, or who in the past we didn't do well in the midterm, that actually tried. Those are the outliers, those are the unicorns. Generally, if you give enough adequate notes of what you're looking for, and if you give the questions you're going to ask, that's why I think it's minimized. If I'm saying I will pick 5 of the poll questions randomly. Let me question a little bit differently. So very often I start off class by asking a question I asked the last class. And invariably, some of you get it wrong. The exact same question I asked on Tuesday, I ask on Thursday, and you get it wrong on Thursday. That's not a lack of trying. It's the opposite of trying. No, it's true. I have numbers to prove. I can show people who statistically get the questions wrong that I asked 48 hours earlier. Anyway, no, okay, fair point. Maxim, Kelsey, and I'm going to teach law. Okay.
I have a couple ones. So, I waited so long, I forgot.
Kelsey?
The only other thing I would say is if people really aren't going to try, they're not going to try. They're going to rationalize it in their head, say,
Fair.
oh, this is that happened to you and that too. And they're like, well, the trial rate was 25% in intelligence, so I can go ahead and talk that. The people who don't want to try are going to look for an excuse. So I feel like.
Well, I mean, right. So the other issue is one of attrition, which we do have to talk about as well. About 4 or 5 years ago, we adjusted the rate of attrition. I'm sorry. Attrition means what percentage of the class gets kicked out, right? Who actually moves on to 2L? We raised it I'm sorry, we lowered the attrition rate, right? It used to be around 2.5. I think we lowered it to about 2.4. Is that right? Oh, God, even worse. 2.3. Right. I'm sorry. So we just got the bar results from last semester, right? So we had 12 people who were below 2.4 in the GPA, right? So people took the bar below 2.4, 12 people. Guess how many of them passed the bar at 12? One. You have virtually 100% chance of failing the bar at that rate. Almost, I mean, 1 out of 12. You do the math. And that was probably a fluke. So one of the reasons why this might be useful is that students are rationalizing and making very poor decisions, then they should get notice earlier in the semester that maybe this is not the right path for them, and that maybe they should try and get a tuition refund after the first semester, and not spend 3 years of their life only to never pass the bar. It's not a pleasant conversation at all. But when our basic kickout rate used to be around 2.5. I'm sorry, right? It was we lowered it. I think I voted against it. I'm usually in dissent with these sorts of things. But if your GPA, if you're like right at the cusp, right, where you're on probation, but you're kind of floating around, look at the bar numbers. Ask me. I'll show them to you later. Right now, actually, I have them right here. It's not pleasant to look at, but these are actual numbers. Maxim, start talking. I'll bring up the numbers.
I'm not ashamed to say it, but like on my TIF Pro final, I got a 1. No, midterm, I got a 1. And then on the torts final midterm, I got
1 out of how
3.
many points?
The Civ Pro was 1 out of 3, and the midterm for torts was out of 20 or 5, something like that. And then I got A's in both. So like to just like say like, oh, this is good to discourage you or like make you think about this is really the right path for you. Like I really think like that adjustment period, your first semester, like it's a real thing.
Well, that's why you get 2 semesters where they do attritions after the second semester, right? It's not just the first semester; it's the first and second semester altogether. So,
but then you're setting up students for failure because you have a lower grade your first semester because 15% of your grade is that midterm in which you are completely readjusting from a different
No, I get that.
learning method.
No, I all fair points. I'm not finding I'm sorry, I'm not finding the bar number. Oh, here it is. I just want to show you the numbers because that way you'll not just making this up. Bar taker. Well, one of the reasons why our bar pass rate is so low is because the kids at the bottom of the GPA score. In other words, if we had a higher attrition rate, we'd be in the high 80s. In other words, the reason why our bar pass rate isn't so great is precisely because the people at the low end of the GPA scale fail such a high percentage. In other words, if they didn't take the bar, that is, they didn't make it past 1L, the bar pass rate was much higher. Right? It's okay. Let me show you this graph. So this is no, this is the LSAT. So this is a graph, right? Right. So this is by South Texas GPA. Look, I mean, so if you're at this level 2526, we had 11 people. I'm sorry, 12 people take the bar, 1 of them passed. All right. So if these people were attrition, as it were, we'd have 11 fewer fails. Not perfect, but if we have a 2.7 GPA cutoff, 8 failed, 5 passed. And once you get to about 3.0, it's all blue. It's all pass. Which is not to say you don't have to do work, right? But the GPA is a very good predictor of our passage rate. And I think it's an active discussion for how much help we provide people at the bottom of the GPA curve. I'm sorry, this is sorry, I went to the wrong chart. Where is it? I'm showing it to you. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm showing it to you. So it's given to the faculty. It's not like it's classified or anything. I don't know. Well, I see the GPA by LSAT, right? There is LSAT's a very, very good predictor of bar passage, as is GPA is even better predictor. But if you're above a 3.0, you have a couple fails. So when we talk about attrition and the students who, after the first year of law school, are a little bit worse off, maybe you realize by the midpoint of your second semester, it's still not clicking. And that's why having graded midterms by the second semester may actually serve some purpose. I know this is not a pleasant conversation. I didn't even want to have it, but I sometimes do these things. I'm curious. I always like when I have these faculty meetings to report back. Here's what my students were thinking, and I want no names, but I was just trying to report back what they're thinking. All right. Yeah, we just got this report about a week or two ago, and I was like, wow, that's pretty stark. No, in fact, the overall bar pass rate was up. We were around 80%. In years past, been closer to 70. So we have a very good bar director, Dean Yarrow. She's and Tony's and more. These people are committed. They're until the end of the night, till 9 p.m. They're every day working their butts off for your students. But the question is, no matter how much effort's put in by our bar team, if you're at a certain end of the curve, does even what difference does it make? Can the people below 2.5 actually be lifted? And I don't know. Let me move on. I want to teach some stuff today, okay? But everyone, if you want to talk to me in office hours, that's fine. But we make these decisions. When we lowered the attrition rate a couple years ago, a lot of people said this is going to happen. Sort of did. All right. Let's talk about easements. Much less interesting. All right. So we talked about last class some terminology, and I'll skip the polling because actually we're now short in time. When we talk about easements, we have some terminology. Okay. So where am I? Who's next? Elise. Oh, that was enthusiastic. I like that. We've been waiting all classes, waiting for me to call on you. Oh, that's nice. Okay, I appreciate that. Elise, what is a dominant tenement? Good. The benefit of what? Just finish up. You're exactly right. Good. Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Just I needed a subject in the sentence, right? When we talk about easements, there's usually two different properties. One that's receiving a benefit, and one that's receiving a burden. The dominant tenement is dominating. It's receiving the benefit of the easement. Right? The dominant tenement is receiving the benefit of the easement. Okay. Grace, are you next, or is it Jacob? Jacob. Give me question 2 then. What is the servient tenement? The servient tenement.
It's the estate that's serving the other.
Oh, good. I like that. What do you mean serving? That's exactly the word I would want you to use.
Well, it's serving.
Serving who?
It's serving the other property. The other.
Ooh. Oh, maybe.
Yes.
See what I did, right? He anticipated my question. Very good.
It's just serving, I guess, the benefit.
Good.
Yeah, serving the benefit to the other state.
Other state. Okay, good. I'll take that. All right. The servient tenement is the property that's serving, or you could say being burdened by the easement. Right? The servient tenement is the property that's serving or being burdened by the easement. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at question number 3, multiple choice. Actually, it's question 3A, and we'll do 3B in a few moments after that. We'll do them back to back. All right. So everyone, please do question 3A. Adam, who owns Wetacre and Dryacre, conveys Wetacre to Betsy, but Adam retains the right to use the lake on Wetacre. Question 3A. What is the servient estate? What is the servient estate? That'll be for Ben in a few moments. Okay, everyone, please put your answers in another 10 seconds. Okay, stop it here. All right, let's do 3B now. What is the dominant estate? Same question. What is the dominant estate? Same question as before. Okay. All right, another 10 seconds, please. All right. All right, Ben, I'll stop it there. Ben, what is a surveying estate in question 3A?
What is a survey or who is a survey?
I'm asking you question 3. What is a surveying estate? A, B, C, D, or E?
This one, I put E
Why?
because I felt like this one was the easement thing gross because it pertains.
You felt like it. Have you seen this question before?
Yes.
No, you don't remember, do you? But it's the same exact question I asked on Thursday. Same exact question. Was it in your notes? All right, so this is my point, right? And I don't mean to call him Ben, but I see statistically, I ask questions and I ask them again the next class, people get them wrong. And this is not to pick on Ben, I'm sure. Let's see the numbers. Yeah. Did you put E? Did you answer your? No one put E.
Well, originally I put C.
All right. Hillary, what is the answer to 3A?
I put
Why do you say C?
because what acre is serving.
Right. What acre serving is being burdened, right? What acres of serving the state is being burdened because the Adam can enter upon it to take the water. Now, Ben, you said something that was correct. You said that is this an easement in gross or an easement appertenant?
Evening
Why?
because the easement pertains to Adam.
Good. How do you know it's in gross? Just what's the clue?
Alright,
Has his name. So with an easement in gross, there is a serving tenement. In this case, it's wet acre, C. Okay. All right, now let's go to this one. Now again, I asked this exact same question on Thursday, and about 40% of you got it wrong. Well, I mean, I I can only do so much, right? Incentives do matter, right? And maybe people respond. Maybe they'll duck it. Maybe they'll say, you know what, I'll rationalize it. I'll just slack off. But I don't know. Maybe incentives don't work. I don't know. Alejandro, what's your answer number 2 or question 3B? I'm sorry. Okay, watch for dry acre. So is this an easement in gross or an easement appertenant? Okay. Is there a dominant estate with an easement in gross? No, there's not. Why is there not a dominant estate with an easement in gross?
I don't remember exactly why, I just know only the upper tenant one have either.
Fernando, why is there no dominant estate with an easement in gross?
Because it's based on the individual being named in the granting of the easement.
Can a person be an estate? No. With an easement in gross, the benefit goes to a person. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. With an easement in gross, the benefit goes to a person, right? But the phrase dominant tenement refers to a piece of land. A person cannot be a tenement, cannot be an estate. So it's sort of a trick question, but again, it's a trick question I asked you on Thursday. The exact same question, 40% got it wrong. Right? Question 11, thank you. Okay. A dominant estate, right, cannot exist with an easement in gross. So what's the answer, Fernando? Question 3B, please.
3B,
What is a dominant estate?
I put D dry acre.
Well, that's what she put.
Mhm.
That's not right.
Yeah, but I get it wrong.
Duke, what'd you put?
I put D also.
Why'd you put E? Yeah, so 4 in a row, 3 in a row, just got this one wrong. I mean, the answer is none of the above. It's question 11 from our last class, the exact same question I asked last class. I put these questions online the night before, so in theory, you have time to look at them. It's not like I'm just asking you to come to class on the spot. Perhaps it's unfair, but to ask a question 2 classes in a row with advance notice and have 3 in a row get it wrong, I don't know. I'm up here. I'm working as hard as I can, and I need to see that in response. So, all right. Yes, Liv. I'll ask you questions then. Let's do this. Right? What's an easement in gross? Well, yeah, it does in person. What's an easement in gross? Good. What's an easement appertenant?
Give that right to whomever owns the parcel of land.
Good. Okay. So with the questions here we have right here, is an easement in gross or an easement appertenant?
This is an easement in gross
Okay. How do you know that?
because it's a named person.
Okay. Easement in gross. Good. With an easement in gross, again, who gets the benefit? At least in this question, who gets the benefit here?
The person.
The person. So if I'm asking you who's the dominant estate, is dry acre a dominant estate? Who does the benefit go to? Does it go to dry acre or does it go to Adam?
It goes to a person.
Goes to a person. So can D be correct?
No.
Okay. Why can't be A? Why can't be Adam?
Because it can be a person.
Correct. An estate cannot be a person. Again, you got it right, but I did this exact same thing last week. Like spent maybe 10 minutes in this question. So, when we get to 3L and we see that, does the midterm make a difference? Who the hell knows, right? I have no idea. Maybe it does. Maybe it's just a waste of time. Yeah. It's serving, yes. Correct.
I will say that it helps that you put the news in bold when you ask them questions. So the feedback, it helps it easier to read it as well. See what you're looking for.
Are you asking when I say what the right answer is? What do we do?
No, I'm saying when you write the questions, it is easier, I think, that's to read because you put like Adam.
Oh, I bolded the names there in the question.
Yeah. So
Okay.
to read someone who do these questions, it's easier to kind of see.
Okay. Yeah, Ivan.
Can you reserve an easement in gross to your heirs, or is it only for a single individual?
Okay, so your question is a good one, right? So can you reserve an easement gross for someone not yet for an heir who is not yet ascertained?
If you would have retained the right to use the lake for his heirs.
So again, Adam can't have heirs till Adam dies, right? You agree with me on that one, right? So it's basically a future interest in. It's an easement gross with a future interest. So at present, there's no one who has that easement. It'll kick in after the death of Adam. Is that what you're saying? I don't see any reason why you couldn't. I guess you could do that. I haven't thought of it. All right. Yeah. Nate.
It transfers to his kids in that situation.
Well, the kids may not be the heirs.
Okay, so whoever the heir is, we just transfer to that individual.
Well, it's not transfer; it's created in the heirs because the heirs don't exist till Adam dies, right? No, all of you are living, thank God, right? You're all alive here. You have no heirs, right? Your heirs only ascertain upon your death, either by will or by intestate statute. Even if you have a will now, that can be ripped up tomorrow. You're not maybe proposed heirs or tentative heirs, perhaps, but none of you have heirs. All right. Sorry, dour Valentine's Day, I suppose. My evening class is gonna have a little bit harder. All right. Anything else? All right, let's move on. So far we've discussed easements that are expressly written down, right? Easements that are written down expressly and that satisfy the statute of frauds. But there are also easements that are not written down, right? There are easements that are not written down. Okay? And there are two categories of easements that are not written down. The first is what are called implied easements. Implied easements. And the second category are called easements by prescription, also called prescriptive easements. You have implied easements and easements by prescription or prescriptive easements. You'll see it both ways. All right. I'll go back to Alejandro. What's an implied easement? It's in the notes. It's in the reading for today. Do the reading today. Okay. Check your notes. Okay, what do you mean recognized by law? What does that mean? Would an easement that's implied satisfy the statute of frauds? Would an implied easement satisfy the statute of frauds?
No.
What does implied mean? Just the word implied.
So you just like know that it's there
But you know how.
orally.
Fernando, what's an implied easement?
Not expressly written in the conveyance,
But is instead.
but it's understood for like custom use.
Ah, okay. So just be clear, Fernando, when I say an implied easement, who's doing the implying? Who's doing the implication?
Granted,
Uh,
who's applying,
yes,
they can use the land?
yes.
That would be whoever using the land, they're claiming the right to use it. right?
Not exactly. Duke, who does the implication? Who does the implying? The court. The court. Implied basically means a court-created easement, right? It's not express. It's not in writing. Does not satisfy the statute of frauds. It's implied. You studied express versus implied in other classes, right? I'm assuming, right? The word implied usually means court created, right? It's some court created easement that the courts can establish. Now, why? Johnny, Asael, why would a court imply an easement? Just give me in plain English why a court would imply an easement that's not in writing. Oh, good. So let's everyone try to answer question number 4. Everyone, what is a quasi easement? What is a quasi easement? What is a quasi easement? All right, I'll stop in 5 seconds. Okay. Asael, what is a quasi easement?
It's a type of implied easement based on prior use.
Ah, okay, I like that definition. Okay. A quasi easement is an easement that's implied based on prior use. A quasi easement is a type of implied easement that's based on prior use. All right. So if you put in your notes, implied easement is an umbrella term by constructive notice, right? I said again, implied easement is sort of an umbrella term, right? It's a category. And one type of an implied easement is a quasi easement. I say it one more time. What's your definition of a quasi easement?
A quasi easement is a type of implied easement based on prior use.
Correct. Thank you, sir. So when you say implied easement, one type of that is a quasi easement that's based on prior usage. right? So imagine this sort of situation. Let's say in your jurisdiction, the adverse possession limitation is 10 years, right? 10 years. And let's say that you've been walking across the path for 9 years, 11 months, and 30 days. And right before the 10-year mark, you get ejected. They build up a fence. So you cannot satisfy the 10-year limitation period for an implied easement. I'm sorry, you cannot satisfy the 10-year period for prescriptive easement. But you might be able to get a court to show you an implied easement, a quasi easement based on prior usage. Again, you haven't quite met the standard for prescription for adverse possession. But you might get it anyway because the court implies the easement. They imply a quasi easement. Okay, we'll get what a quasi easement is. Yes, sir.
Last time you answered someone's question over in that area that asked kind of like a quid pro quo where you can use my wood if I use your leg. And I think you said that was a quasi easement?
No, that'd be a reciprocal easement. We'll do later what's called a reciprocal covenant. I don't think we have any reciprocal easements in the book, but they're reciprocal covenants where each is burdening each other's land. And it's this reciprocal relation. It's a little bit tricky. We'll do that later, I promise. I hate saying we'll do it later because I'll do it now, but you got to build up to it a little bit. Sarah?
Also, the case we read today talked about how when using part of the land for benefit of another part. So, would you want on the test both the one from the case and then the one we just said, or?
What's the difference?
I feel like one is for one person, the one owner using his land, but then
I'll tell you what, let's do the Othen case. Yeah, we'll get to the case in a few minutes, I promise. Okay. Yeah, we'll get to the case in a few minutes. I'm not quite done with this yet, okay? So quasi easements based on prior usage. Alex, what is an easement by necessity? Help us out with that. That's the second type of implied easement. You have a quasi easement and easement by necessity. Okay, good. Right. So a quasi easement is when a court implies an easement based on prior usage, how it's been used in the past. Right. But it usually requires some extended, ongoing practice for many years or some period of time. And easement by necessity doesn't have a time requirement, right? It doesn't really require a lot of prior usage. You could just move on to the land and the first day request an easement by necessity. But an easement by necessity, and it's defined differently in different places, means you absolutely need it, or maybe you reasonably need it. But in order for you to use this land, this easement must be implied. Okay? It's not a matter of prior usage. In fact, there can be no prior usage. It's based on necessity. And there are different standards. We'll see the Texas standard is what's called strictly necessary, that you absolutely need this easement or else you can't even use the property. That's very hard to satisfy because in most cases you can get around it. Go trespass someone else's land, right? In other jurisdictions, it's reasonably necessary, and the court's more likely to imply the easement. But again, in both cases, with a quasi easement and easement by necessity, the courts are implying an easement. They're creating an easement where it does not otherwise exist. Excuse me. Okay. Rylan, what's easement by prescription? The other category.
So I think it's if you use the right of way for a long time.
What's a right of way? You're actually using the correct term. But what does that mean, right of way?
When you're allowed to cross someone else's property.
Whoa, be careful. Allowed. If you're allowed to cross, is that prescription? What do you call it when you allow someone to cross your property? What's that called? I hear whispering. Sinclair? When you allow someone to cross your property, what do you, there it is. He has it. I'll come back to Sinclair for the next one. A license. If you allow someone to cross your property, that's permission. That's a license. Riley, can you get prescription through a license? Correct. So right again. Sinclair, what is prescription or prescriptive easement?
Prescriptive easement is similar to adverse
Good,
possession, but
good.
different because it just like concerns the time being made.
What do you mean the time? You are on the right track, and then the last part, I'm not sure.
Because adverse possession like ties the property to the person. And then prescription just concerns the property itself.
You're close. Alexa, you want to try it again? What's prescriptive easements?
I thought it was just, sorry, different from habit possession because of the exclusivity of it.
You're not wrong. Give me more.
So basically it has to be, strictly, sorry, the use need not to be exclusive in the sense that it must be by one person only. It must depend on some of the right of others.
You're not giving what I'm looking for. You're correct. Manure, what's a prescriptive easement? You're telling me how to get one. I'm asking what is a prescriptive easement. Manure?
Just like what, based off what they said, they have to use it adversely.
What do you get at the end of a prescriptive easement? What do you actually get? What do you actually acquire? No, you do not acquire the entire land. What do you acquire? Yes, you acquire the right to use the property in a particular way, right? When we talk about adverse possession, we're saying you acquire Blackacre and fee simple, right? You acquire the entire lot. But with a prescriptive easement, you're acquiring the right to use it, which often means the right to cross it, right? It's not a trespass if you cross the land because you have a prescriptive easement. If you remember the very first week of class, we had Van Valkenburg v. Lutz, right? Remember the guy was crossing the lot every day for decades to try and get to the road. And initially they said, oh, we argue we have a prescriptive easement, right? They only argue the right to cross the property, right? Prescription only governs the right to use it. It's an easement that gives you that right.
I was wondering if you had a question about like reserve the right to go to use the well on what acre that would be used as a prescriptive.
Correct. Yes, you can cross into Wet Acre and use the well. That's a prescriptive easement. If you walk every day for a decade into Wet Acre, open, notorious, hostile, the elements are exactly the same elements. You go to Wet Acre every day. They know you're doing, they don't stop you. You acquire a prescriptive easement. Right? I mean, the book references, for example, Rockefeller Center in New York City, right? That there's a street right in front of it, 30 Rock, where every year they shut down for one day. They close off the street to public access. Why? To prevent any claims for prescription from maturing. You will not get the requisite period because one day a year, the road's closed. But imagine a guy just lives on the street in New York City. It's not so crazy, right? People might call that their home, right? They shut down one day a year to prevent any claims from prescription from maturing. Yes, Connor.
So you could get even simply like going on someone's land pretty consistently and hunting on it.
If you were to hunt on someone's land for a decade,
Yeah.
consistently, they know you're doing it, they don't take action to eject you, you would then obtain a prescriptive easement to hunt on that property. Yeah. Which is, again, good incentive to kick trespassers off your land. Or shoot them, I suppose, as it were, right? But if you fail to take those actions, you actually give up a stick in your bundle. You give up a stick in your bundle. Good question. Kelsey?
So once you've met the statute of limitations for a prescriptive easement, is it just automatic that you gave it? You don't have to like go to court?
This is it's actually a very, almost like a philosophical question, right? When does the easement mature? In theory, at least, the day you hit year 10, right? Let's say it's a 10-year clock, that's yours. Now, realistically, what happens is, let's say on day 10 plus 1, right? And the 10th year plus 1 day, the owner says, okay, I'm going to finally eject her. Then when they go to court, the court say, no, effective 10 years, this was now a prescriptive easement, you can't eject them. So realistically, a court will have to say at some point that there is such an easement, but the date on which that easement began would be the 10-year clock. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So they could still try to get the quasi easement,
Well, if you get to 10 years, you're going to want the prescriptive easement. That's easy. Quasi easements are much more difficult because there's all equity and there's fairness and stuff like that. With prescription, it's a bright line rule. If you get it for 10 years, it's yours.
But still, if they kick them out like right before
Year 9, yeah, that's it.
they could still. try to-
Yes, perfect answer. If you do not meet the 10-year clock, you fall back to implied easement, right? If you do not meet the prescription statute limitation, you'll fall back and try to get a quasi easement based on prior usage. Imagine again, you're at year 9, month 11, day 30. You're not there yet. You go to there. Yes.
There's
None of them. Correct. With a quasi easement, you do not need claim of right. You do not need hostility for aggressive trespasser. All you need is some sort of claim of prior usage, but it's very flexible. Courts have a lot of discretion there. With adverse possession, courts have a rule they can apply. 4 elements, right? Boom, 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 boom. Entry, open notorious, claim of right, continuous, right? But for quasi easements, there's no bright line rules.
So what would, is it just based off the court decide?
You're rolling the dice. If you go to court with asking for a quasi easement, maybe you win, maybe you lose. But if you go there for prescription, you're going to win. Look at the case we have today. It's very nebulous. Even with necessity, the courts don't agree on necessity. In Texas, it's really hard to satisfy the strict necessity standard. But good question. All right, I'm going to have to move a little bit fast because we've got our nice little discussion today. Happy Valentine's Day. No one's giving me a Valentine's today, right? That's okay. That's okay. I have to deliver bad news. It's part of my job. It's one of the worst things to do is actually meet the student who failed. One of the worst things in the world. Tell them you have to take this class again. I'm sorry. One of the worst things in the world, or even worse, are people will come after the first year seeking to have more points added to the score because they were kicked out, academically dismissed, or other students who lost a scholarship because of the exam score that they went below the threshold for grades. Those are not pleasant conversations. So I deliver bad news. It's an unfortunate part of the job. All right. Let's talk about this diagram. It's labeled 10.4 in your book, but they changed it. It's on page 798 in your book. I want to talk about this diagram for a minute, which I think will help make Othen make a little bit more sense. Anna, let me ask you a question. I promise it's not a trick question. Do you have an easement against yourself? Why not? It's obvious, right? Can you trespass on yourself, Anna? Sounds awful. Right? You can't trespass on yourself. Why? It's obvious. Because you own it, right? All right. So let's say, Jill, let me ask you a question. Let's say that there are 2 plots of land, right? We have wet acre and dry acre. The question before. And let's say there's an easement on wet acre. And then the same person acquires wet acre. So the same person owns both wet acre and dry acre. What happens to the easement? Yep. Same person owns wet acre and dry acre. What happens to the easement? Dissolves, vanishes, disappears. Why? To my question to Anna, you can't have an easement against yourself. 1 second, Connor. One of the ways to get rid of an easement is to have the same party acquire both the dominant and the servient tenement. Right? One of the ways to extinguish. One of the ways to extinguish an easement is for the same person to have the dominant and servient tenement. Once you do that, the easement just vanishes because you can't have an easement against yourself. Connor? I knew you were going to ask in gross. Nope. With an easement in gross, but I just said it doesn't work. But I said it only works for easement after tenant. Correct.
So whenever you resell the land,
The easement continues.
It recontinues, it reopens.
If there's an easement in gross, it follows the owner. It doesn't matter where he is.
But after tenant?
With an easement after tenant, if the same person owns wet acre and dry acre, the easement extinguishes.
Okay. Even if he resells it?
Doesn't matter, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the ways. If you want to get rid of an easement, you have the same person acquire all the land, and the easements vanish. Because you cannot have an easement against yourself. Don't forget that. All right. So Clayton, let's look at this example. Right? It's on page 798 in your book, and we have this unfortunate map. Right? What's wrong with lot number 5, Clayton? It's landlocked. You don't want to be in lot number 5, right? Why, Clayton? Why don't you want to be lot number 5? You have no out. You have no way of getting out of anywhere, right? This is like, it's sort of like cartoonish, right? But this is a classic case of having landlocked property. Right? So let's say, again, this is in your book. I'm not making this question up. It says A. A owns all 5 lots. Is there any problem there, Clayton, if A owns all 5 lots? No, because he can go this way, he can go this way, wherever he wants, right? All right, but then we learn that A dies intestate. He dies without a will. And he has 5 children. Okay? Poor child F. He's F, as they say, right? Lot 1 goes to B, lot 2 goes to C, lot 3 goes to D, lot 4 goes to F, I'm sorry, lot 4 goes to E, and poor stuck in the middle. It'll run to the litter. Lot 5 goes to F. So then, well, I'm sorry?
I was talking.
Okay. F sues the owners of 1 through 4, right? Because he wants an easement by necessity. He probably doesn't even care which one gives it to him, right? He just wants one of them to give him an easement by necessity. All right. Now this next part's a little bit tricky, right? In the law, we say that a person would not intentionally landlock himself, right? So imagine the facts are a little bit different, right? Imagine that A didn't die, but he sold off lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, and lot 4. Kendall, would A actually sell off all those lots to landlock himself? So we presume that's even possible? No. Oh, I skipped this section. Oh, I'll come to you guys next. I'm sorry. Poor Kendall. I'm sorry. This is not a hard question, right? We presume that A would not landlock himself. So we have this concept of a reservation. A reservation. Okay, what does that mean? If A were to sell lots 1, lots 2, and lot 3, and then he's about to sell lot number 4, we say that A would reserve an easement on lot 4. That A would reserve an easement on lot 4 to cross over lot 4. In that case, lot 4 would be the servient estate, and lot 5 will be the dominant estate. Right? We say they reserve it. 1 second, Daisy. Okay. The reason why is that A would not intentionally landlock himself. So if he sells lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, when he sells lot 4, we say that he reserves an easement to cross over. The owner of 5 will cross over to the owner of 4. Daisy, is that?
Yeah, but I feel like
No, ask it.
why 4 and why not all of them?
That was the sequence I gave you. Because think about it this way, right? When he sells lot 1, Daisy, look up, right? So when he sells lot 1, can he still exit? You see, so again, A purchases 1, right? Then 2, then 3. 5 can still go out because the same person owns 5 and 4. But when he sells 4, that's when that landlocks him in. That's the last one. So it's just a matter of chronology. If I switch the ordering, it could be any one of them. Yeah. All right. But here, right, that didn't happen. All 5 lots were given at once. So there's no reserved easement. Instead, Connor, what remedy would F seek in this case when he inherits lot 5? Correct. Is this necessity? Absolutely. Even in Texas, this is necessity, right? You're literally trapped. You can't get in the land without trespassing. So a court would imply an easement. Yes, sir, Grayson.
So going back to the reservation, now just to clarify what it was, that A owned all of them and he reserved.
As he sells them off. Correct. As A sells them off, he would not landlock himself on 5. He would put an easement reserved on 4.
1, 2, 3, in like in 4, in like selling it off, he writes in the.
Well, he doesn't need to write it, though. That's the key point. With an implied easement, it's not writing. If it's in writing, that's an express easement that satisfies the statute of frauds. With an implied easement, it's he forgot to write that easement. A court comes later and creates it.
Do the conditions for a reservation
No. That's a good question. Do the conditions of the say it again? I think maybe I misheard your question. I think also usually. There might be an instance where it's different, but I think most of the time when the court implies an easement, it's going to be based on necessity. I think that's almost always been the right answer, but I'm not positive.
So if A wanted to live on 5 And so 1, 2, and 3. So he wanted to sell 4. So he put in easements and growth for his benefit before he sells it.
Right, but that's an express easement. The entire purpose here is this is an implied easement that's not in writing. He puts it in writing in gross, then it's express easement. It'll be enforceable. Right?
So both work.
Well, the difficulty is with a express easement, with an express easement, it's automatic, it's in writing. But with an implied easement, a court must then rule in your favor, and maybe they won't for some reason. So they may not both work. Probably. You want it to be in writing.
Don't want to be like
You want it to be in writing.
that and growth.
Correct. You want an express easement in writing. Hiller?
This doesn't apply to U.S.
No. It's generally the case that you can't trespass upon the sovereign. There's a Latin phrase that I can never remember that says that. You can gain prescriptive easements, though, against local municipalities, which is why New York City, for example, shuts down parts of Rockefeller Center. Yes, go ahead.
But the U.S. government can't get if they land because they can.
Well, the U.S. government has the power of eminent domain. So, for whatever reason, the U.S. government had landlocked property, they could use eminent domain to seize it. They take themselves off. They wouldn't even need to use a prescriptive. They wouldn't even need to use implied easement. They would just buy the damn thing. Yeah, Grayson.
So, just to confirm, reservation easements would also need to go to the point of use rule and be like, he did have.
Correct. Because if it was in writing, you don't need to go to the court. It's in writing. It's all about express easements,
And
implied easements.
the process will probably be found similarly to necessity.
Very similar. Yeah, let's look at the case. I realize we're short on time. We're going to have to, I think, did you do Matthews versus Bayhead last year? Good. All right. Who am I up to? Connor, I did call you? All right. Will, you next? All right. You want to give me the facts, please, in Othen versus Rosier, which is a Texas case.
Well, Hill owns this large survey of lands, and he first sold its Owen or Othen.
Othen, I don't know.
Othen.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, he sold 2 more acres to Rosier, and essentially Rosier, there was some water coming through, and he didn't want to damage the property, so he built a levee to channel the water. But the problem was that Othen used where the levee was to access the Beltline Road, and so essentially the levee made the road unusable and muddy and whatnot. And so he essentially sued him for access to get to the Beltline Road.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. The facts of this case are a little bit complicated. And I encourage you, if you don't have the case summary I gave for this case, you bring it up now, because I think the pictures help. I don't know. I made this one myself. Maybe it's not the best, but it at least helps me think it through. The diagram in the book is not very helpful, but no, you're shaking your head no. Okay. All right. So Hill owned this entire plot of land, which is called the Tone Survey. It was a huge plot, almost 2,500 acres. And this lot is bounded or bordered by roads on each side. Yeah, Fish Creek Road, Duncanville Road, Beltline Road, lovely names for roads. But then Hill made certain transactions. And there really are 4 relevant lots. Lots 4, 5, 7, and 8. Okay. So we learn that in 1896, Hill sold lot 4. This is the 100-acre woods. You want to see that movie Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey? Looks kind of scary. I want to say that it's a horror movie with Winnie the Pooh. Anyway, 100-acre forest, right? Winnie the Pooh. Anyway, so there's a 100-acre lot number 4. It's blank stares. 100-acre lot number 4 was sold in 1896. Okay. Then 1897, he sold lot number 8. Okay, for 60 acres. Then 1899, he sold lot number 5, which is 53 acres. And then in 1899, they sold lot number 7, which is 16 acres. This map is not to scale, by the way, so that not to scale. making this map to scale would just confuse people even more. So I just not to scale. You ever see I was in Back to the Future when they had the model of their cars? Like, it's not to scale. I'm sorry. Remember that? Yeah. Got it. All right. So over the next few decades, there were more transactions that took place. Eventually, Othen acquired Lot 8, this one over here. Then Othen acquired Lot 5. And then later, Rosier acquired Lots 4 and 7. So you see the problem here, right? In order for Othen to get to this Beltline Road, he must cross over Rosier's property and say, well, wait a minute, Josh, why can't he go to Lot 2 or Lot 11 or Lot 6, Lot 9? And the answer is he could, right? Which actually becomes an important part of this case. He had options. For whatever reason, this was a path he was used to taking. And at some point, he was given permission to walk across Lots 7 and Lots 4. We think, we're not sure. Randall, if he had permission to walk across Lots 4 and 7, what would we call that? What's that phrase called? I'm asking you, what's it called when you get permission to cross someone's land in this case? Was it in writing?
No, it was not as implied.
Well, or what else might be? Sort of implied easements. What do we call it? What's that phrase? Rylan? License. I'll come back to you. A license. Never forget on questions about easements with the licenses. I can throw those in there real quick. If it's oral permission, it's a license. And that's I can trip you up in the exam real easy on that one. Okay? So there's get a license. But license can be revoked at any point, unless there's some sort of reliance, perhaps. All right. So soon Rosier built a levee, or levee, however you want to say it, which flooded the path that Rosier took. I'm sorry, that Othen took. So Othen went to court. Okay. Now again, Othen could have just purchased easements from Lot 2, from Lot 11, given permission otherwise, but he didn't. He went to court to try to enforce his prior usage. The trial court found there was an easement by necessity. What happened in appeal, Randall?
After the trial court, we got for the university.
Okay, and what did the Supreme Court of the state do? The Supreme Court of Texas.
There.
Okay, why is there no easement by necessity here?
Because Rosier still had a gate that was maintaining the way in which people could access it, even though the gate was illicit.
What's the standard in Texas? How necessary must an easement be? Is there strict necessity here? Correct. All right. So there's no strict necessity here, right? Because he could have gone north, could have gone south, could have gone west, or I'm sorry, east. You could have gone to Lot 2 or Lot 11 or Lot 11, 9, 6, 3, whatever, right? You had lots of options. So there's no easement by necessity. But that's only the first category, right, of implied easements. They also considered quasi easements or implied easements. So, Cole, let's talk about reservation for a bit. Okay. When Hill conveyed lots 4 and 7, would Hill have reserved an easement for himself to cross over those lots? Why? I'm just asking about Hill. Which lots did Hill own? I'll ask the question again. When Hill sold lots 4 and 7, would he have landlocked himself? Would Hill have had to reserve an easement onto 4 and 7? Why not?
He has access to the other areas.
Correct. So look at all the green surrounding the red, right? When Hill sold lots 4 and 7, there was no need for him to reserve an easement across 4 and 7 because he could have gone this way, could have gone this way, could have gone that way. Therefore, there's no implied easement on lots 4 and 7, and there's no easement by necessity on lot 4 and 7. Okay. There's no implied easement. There's no easement by necessity on 4 and 7. Therefore, poor Mr. Othen gets Zippo. All right, questions on this case? Sarah, did this clear up? You asked me a few minutes ago about this case.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Ivan.
What better, they wouldn't give him an easement out of necessity because he had other options to pay whatever, but what if everyone denies? Would they transfer it to necessity?
You know what? The strict necessity standard is very unfair, isn't it? I think if you were to go back to the court and say no one sold an easement, that might be a better argument, but at least that's a try.
It's like, okay, more than, it's just like.
Probably.
Like,
You know, there's a classic example. It's like, you know, you're a landlocked piece of property. Why can't you use a helicopter, right? Why can't you just use you're on an island, or why can't you use a boat? The better answer is you should figure this out before you bought it. No, I mean, it's not crazy, right? If you looked at the map and you realized that he was in the middle of a property and the road was, you know, some miles away, you probably should have thought, maybe don't buy this property, that direct road access. Yeah, so Connor.
was he done better than what happened to Quasi Easements?
You know, I thought about that. It's actually a good question, right? Because he's been using this land for many years. The trick with a quasi easement, though, is it's based on like sort of equitable principles, and the court will probably say, you know what, I don't think equity gives you this, right?
Even if he had been
Yeah,
continually using
I
it
think
for
so. So
other
even
reasons.
if, well, I think because he was using a permission, it was sort of like a license that was just revoked, but you could say maybe it was a estoppel, maybe not. It's equitable, so it's very hard to predict. Good question. What else? So poor Mr. Othen at the end had no way of getting to the road. I'm sure he found a way to get to the road. Yes. Well, I didn't say that. So there's some case law suggesting that when the court implies an easement by necessity, there'll be compensation provided to the owner. It's basically a forced sale. The court's forcing you. I don't know that always happens, but the court could say, you know what, if you want easement by necessity, I'm going to make you pay an amount. What that amount is, I don't know. No, that's correct. If there's an easement by prescription, you've acquired it, and it was to the failing of the property owner to eject you. A court could make you pay for a quasi easement. We have a case later this semester, I think it might be next class, where the issue of compensation comes. So let me just table that for now. Are other questions in Othen? Kelsey?
I was a little confused, and I don't think it really helped because where some of the things that it was in the book about the 3 elements to establish an implied easement.
I wouldn't stress too much about that. Yeah. Okay. All right. We good? All right, let's move on. Again, Texas follows a strict necessity standard, which is very, very hard to satisfy. Money is not an object, so to speak. So if you have to pay more money, that's not enough reason to go to the court to seek an easement by necessity. All right, let's go to the beach. I I grew up in Staten Island, which was very close to the Jersey Shore, and I had a very strong. Everyone seen the show Jersey Shore? At least familiar with it? One of the million seasons. I used to be obsessed with the show. I actually went to all the locations of the houses. I went to the Jersey Shore. I went to in Firenze and Florence. I went to Miami a long time ago. True story. These were the people I went to school with. If you want to know if the show's accurate, it's pretty accurate. Maybe not now. Now the show's just all fake stuff. But like the first season, that was about what a school bus ride looked in Staten Island. Yeah, it's a Jersey thing. You wouldn't understand. All right. Who's next? Lloyd. Oh, Lloyd then Liv. I'm sorry, but you're in deck, Liv. Lloyd, do you want to give me the facts, please, in Matthews versus Bayhead?
Yeah, so. Okay, and we have the association. Like the property there, only access to live in that area. That a public advocate may file suit, making the argument that they should be public access by those streets.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. And again, you read this case last semester, right? So I wanted to do as in depth as I perhaps usually would. We're in New Jersey, right? New Jersey goes, I'm sorry, the common law goes to New Jersey to die. You don't know what's going to happen. This case involves the so-called public trust doctrine. And I suspect you read this case last semester when you talked about the public trust and intellectual property. Is that right? Bayad used to be in the case book in the chapter on easements. I think it makes a lot more sense in the easement chapter. No? Maybe? Yes? No? Because if you don't know what an easement is, I don't know why this case even makes sense. But the editors of the book in their infinite wisdom brought it into the intellectual property chapter. But I cover it here anyway, because I think it makes more sense here. At common law, the water was held in the public trust. That is, no one owned the ocean. It was held by the people. Of course, in order to get into the water, you need to have some port of entry, right? So you have ports, you have harbors and the like. Then you have beaches. So again, a common law, actually accessing the water was considered a matter of public right. So we have something called vertical access. Vertical access. Vertical access means you get from a public road down to the water. So even in New Jersey at common law, you always had these sort of paths that were next to private beach clubs that you would be allowed to walk down and access the water. I've been to the Jersey Shore many times. I can tell you this. They can't block you from accessing the water. But you also had a lot of stuff in between, which my lovely emoji-filled diagram depicts. I made this myself, you can probably tell. So there are different segments of the beach. Right, so you have the water, then you have vertical access to get there. The area closest to the water is called the wet sand, as the name suggests, this is the part of the sand that's wet. Now, the water line is not fixed. You have the tide, which is controlled by the moon, right? You have high tide and low tide. Sometimes the water comes all the way out. Sometimes the water goes all the way back to the ocean, right? The water moves around. We have something called the mean or average. Remember, mean is average from statistics. The mean or average high water mark. And this is generally as far as the wet sand goes. The water doesn't go beyond this point, unless there's like a storm or something else. Then you have the dry sand. This is the sand that is, as the name suggests, usually dry. This is where you might sit on the beach and put a towel and have a drink, whatever else you guys do on Valentine's Day, right? You go there to enjoy. Further back from the dry sand, you have what's called the vegetation line. This is a point where plants are able to grow. Again, if salt water spills over an area, you can't have any plant life because it'll die. Right? So in order to have vegetation, it's a place where there's no salt water coming across it. And then eventually you have private property where it might be a beach club or a resort or wherever else you want to have. So at common law, you always had access vertically. But Liv, what about what's called horizontal access, the ability to walk along the wet sand at common law? Did you have that right? Correct. Why was that? I mean, there's an obvious reason, but just tell me why. Yeah. Right? So you're limited to just going into the water, right? Could you dry off in the sand? Could you play like volleyball, like Top Gun style? Could you do that or no? No, you could not. You know, I like that movie. That was pretty good. The movie I like. I enjoyed it. There was a scene with opening beach volleyball. Sorry, you didn't see it, so I apologize. So at common law, you could not hang out on the wet sand. That was called horizontal access. But Diara, patiently waiting. This is New Jersey where the common law goes to die. So what happened here? Shocker, right? And what they do? Correct. I'm talking about horizontal access on the wet sand, right? What about the horizontal access on the wet sand? Sorry. Okay. All right, good. All right, so there are two sort of issues here, right? At common law, you only had access vertical, top and down. But the court said that bathers, people in the water, have extra rights. They need to be able to enjoy the water. In order to enjoy the water, you must be able to walk horizontally across the wet sand and have access to the dry sand. They said the court requires, I'm going to read you the quote, the complete pleasure of swimming must be accompanied by periods of rest and relaxation, with the right to tan on the sand, as it were. All right. I guess you can't tan on the wet sand. So the court says is the dry sand must be treated in the same fashion as dry sand owned by the government. This public trust doctrine is there. So effectively, the court implied an easement. Vertical, horizontal, and dry sand. But not an easement for the benefit of a particular person, but an easement for the benefit of the public. Right? The public trust doctrine basically here is used to create easements for the benefit of the public. What about the actual beach club? At least in this case, the court said the beach club can limit its membership. But later, of course, because New Jersey, the court would say that everyone should be a member, right? And they have to charge reasonable fees. So even today, if you want to become a member of a beach club in New Jersey, you have to be able to pay a reasonable fee. You want to see Sharknado? You want to watch that movie? It involves a New Jersey beach club. It's a terrible movie. That tornado with sharks. It's Sharknado. Okay. All right. But again, this is a case where the court uses the public trust doctrine to imply easements for both vertical access, horizontal access on the wet sand, as well as access to the dry sand. And eventually the court said even the beach clubs themselves must be open to the public. All right. Questions on Matthews? Yes.
Like, what if the lot of land went from the house to the beach or like to the water?
Well, generally, you can't build on wet sand because your house will collapse into the ocean.
What I'm saying is like you have the house, right? And then you just have a line that goes all the way towards the water. Like, cause I know there's like some houses you can buy that do have like a private beach.
Well, that's Texas, not New Jersey.
Even in like California.
California might be a little bit different, but New Jersey, any beach club has access to the public. The public trust doctrine varies by the state. I don't think that New Jersey is the majority rule. Never is. So let me sort of summarize today's class. By today, you should understand very quickly the differences between easements, appertenant easements, and gross. You should be able to know what is a dominant tenement and servient tenement. And if you tell me that an easement in gross is a dominant tenement, you are in trouble. Don't get this question wrong again. It's just I had the same question twice. Get it right. So especially the second time. From today's lesson, you cannot trespass upon yourself. You can have an easement upon yourself. So in theory, at least, if a person were to landlock himself, the court would say there was a reservation of an easement. But in the absence of reservation, we can say there might be an implied easement, quasi easement, or an easement by prescription, or an easement by necessity. And the courts have various standards for those types of implied easements. All right. Questions? All right. I put the poll up, please. Whatever you want me to think. If you want to say this day was garbage, you can tell me. But please give me your feedback. Garbage, garbage. Okay. I'll see you all on Thursday.
But